With me today on the Agents to Owners podcast, I have Beth DelaForest, owner of Aspire Insurance Group, based out of Hudson, Wisconsin. Beth has been in the insurance business for 21, almost 22 years. And after getting to know Beth a little bit, you can see her true entrepreneurial spirit. So I am excited to have Beth on the show. Without further ado, welcome, Beth DelaForest.
Oh, thank you, Brad.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. So, just like we always do, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the insurance space and bring us up to now?
All right. Well, I fell into insurance. Well, I think most of us do. I've
Mhm.
ran into a few people that intended on getting insurance, but I'd say the vast majority it's completely by accident.
Yes.
Um, so I was 20 and going to school full time and needed a job to pay rent, and so I ended up landing a receptionist job, actually at a State Farm agency back in the
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
So I was there for about 10 years and just shy of 10 years actually. And thankful for that time frame. I think on the captive side, one of the things that I feel like they do well is training. So I feel like from an operational standpoint, I was really sound in my knowledge. Um, and I, at that point, jumped into the independent agency world and started a book of business there. That was in 2010 through an agency who allowed me to have first right of refusal on my book of business. So um, I built from 2010 to 2014. And at that point, felt like I had the independent side kind of figured out enough and became really passionate about like culture. My why was just very
Mm.
different than the agency that I had built my book at. And so I bought my book and started Aspire Insurance Group in 2014. And we have 100% organically grown up until 2020 when I did an acquisition. And
Yes.
so that was fun. It was always one of my career bucket list items that I wanted to do. And so we're, a few years on the other side of that now, and then have just continued to organically grow since then. So now we are a team total of 9 in the agency, and we have 2
Wow.
locations. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So you touched on team culture, which that's something that I know that you are very intentional about. Tell me some of the ways that you create a strong team culture.
Okay. Um, so I think it really starts more with why. So my why was that when I was at State Farm and the agency that I first started growing my book of business at, I just noticed that there's some real cultural issues. Not to, I'm thankful for hard times because they
Yeah.
refine us, right? But I was often told, you're just an order taker. And
Mm.
a lot of times I would see and notice that the agent specifically that I had worked for, had never been in like a CSR seat or
Yeah.
the receptionist seat. And so there wasn't a good understanding of the hurdles and the frustrations and that type of thing. And so I also ran into a lot of really crabby people in the insurance world. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just really crabby. And I'm not crabby and I
Yeah.
don't want to be around crabby people. And so culture became really important to
Yeah.
me because I feel like we have such an amazing industry but I don't want to, I want to like enjoy what I'm doing. I want people around me to enjoy what they're doing. And I don't, want to be around crabby people. Um, so I also want my team to be seen and heard. And my leadership style is not top down, it's bottom up. I lead with a lot of empathy. So, um, that's kind of my why, but
Yeah.
my what is so we do culturally some weird things. Everybody has an element of hybrid. Some people are fully remote, some people are more in the office. It's mostly driven by what that particular person wants. And it's been like that pre-COVID. It's been like that
Yeah.
since 2014. And so all of our systems are built in the cloud. So everybody, I wanted it to be where as long as you have a laptop, you can work from anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection. So
Mm.
that gave my team freedom,
Yep.
and that was really important to me. Outside of that, we do a lot of different things like unlimited vacation,
Mhm.
which is a topic in our industry right now, and it can be really controversial. But when you have the right people
Yeah.
on the bus, it works really good.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I like is it creates an environment where we just trust each other to be adults and to care for our positions and our people. But it doesn't, I'm not tracking everybody, and it's not tit for tat kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it just is honoring to my team. I do some of things like we do weekly recognition, which is but it's all done through the team. So each week at our team meeting at the end, we close it out by the person who won weekly recognition last week is responsible
Mhm.
for choosing weekly recognition this week, and they give a little spiel about who they chose and why, and then we pass a $10 gift card that goes around.
Okay.
So it just really helps the cohesiveness of the team.
So is that something weekly recognition? Can that be something as simple as um, Sarah had this amazing phone call. It was very difficult. She kept
Mhm,
her composure, which
mhm.
maybe she wouldn't have done in the past. So is it can be something as simple as something like that?
Yep,
Yeah.
totally. Yep, we're not and I don't look at these big grandiose things. It's the devil's in the details. It's in the small little acts that we do. Um, we have very intentional core values, and so we are always intentional to be doing things that tie into our core values. I do professional training with everybody once a month. And I do something called Friday 15s, which is a time slot of 15 minutes for the whole team on Fridays, where I connect with each person. Just
Nice.
how are you doing? How's your week? How's this? How's that? Because you would not believe, like, when you start kind of getting into the nitty gritty of life with your team, how much life they have going on behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
when you know that there's certain hurdles and frustrations or
Wow.
scares or that type of thing behind the scenes, like it helps you lead better because you don't take things for face value. You know, okay, this person's probably 10 minutes late today because they're having a real struggle with their son right now, and their son is going through this,
Yeah.
and like I had that happen a couple weeks ago and this is not normal for people to be late. Like, in fact, I don't even remember the last time anyone was late. But one of my team members was 15 minutes late, and I was starting to get a little worried about her. And I just reached out and to make sure she was okay. And she's like, "Oh, I forgot to update you. I needed to drop off, my son in the morning at this new place." But she has been going through some things with her son.
Yeah.
And so I don't need to be consequential about it, right? I can extend grace, and
Yeah.
that's so, those are a few things that I do. Um, yeah.
Let me ask about the Friday 15s. I think that's so intriguing and I love it. Is that mainly for personal? I guess it could be either personal or something going on around the office.
Yeah,
Is it
it's
just kind of open
really
floor?
yep. I usually have a couple of questions, in case they don't, like, come with anything to talk about. It's like, "What are you doing this weekend?" Or, you know, I
Yeah.
I just ask a ton of questions or go in question mode if they don't come with much, but they always do. And also, I take notes in my journal, and so I just have to go back to the previous Friday and be like, "Oh, hey, how was Christmas shopping at XYZ?" Or "How was your sister's bridal shower?" Or you know what I mean, whatever is going on. I will have notes going back. So so I know, like, kind of what their weekend plans are, and if they're, and that's just purely me staying connected with them on a personal level.
I bet that your many on your team look forward to that time to say, whether it's something that comes up, "Hey, do you think we need this?" piece on the CRM, or just to
Yes.
have that FaceTime with you. Boy, I think that's a great idea. I
You
love it.
know, my worry was that I was being annoying, that I was
Mm.
scared when I first started because my intention was to stay connected with them. That was really
Yeah,
important to me. And especially with, the two having 2 locations, and then I'm really more on, like, the visionary side of things and not in operations anymore, and so I need to be intentional about staying connected with them, like, connecting and recognizing and keeping them feeling like they're part of the whole, especially because we are so spread out and have
yeah,
different variety of in office, at home, type of thing, like, keeping that cohesive feeling, you have to be really intentional. But my fear was that they were gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna talk to her about for 15 minutes?" But it was really funny because through the grapevine, I guess within the agency, I've heard from, people just talk the team talk about them, about how much they look forward to them.
yeah,
So, and I found that we get to talking, and there's times where, like, someone's in the waiting room for a few minutes. I'm like, "Sorry, we're tying up right now." That's more common
yeah.
than ending anything early.
Yeah. I know I try to be very intentional with meeting with my team at least once a week,
Mhm.
to, if nothing else, just to check in, just see how it's going, what's on your plate this week.
Yeah.
And I know that the entire team wants to spend a little bit of time with me each week. So to have it specific like that and scheduled
Mhm.
is much better. That's one thing I don't do, is have it scheduled.
Yeah.
So
I
that's a
feel like
great idea.
if I have to go by memory, I'm kinda doomed. I have to have it on my calendar.
Yeah. Now, any fun things, planned, or for this year? I know last year, if you met some team goals, that you turned your hair pink.
I did.
So I saw that. I
Yeah.
thought that was great. And what was that goal where you turned your hair pink? If
Yeah.
you met those goals?
So, each one of our team, even if you're, in operations, like, we all have a growth component to our
Mhm.
roles. And so we have what I do is we all set our goals, and then I take the goals and I just roll them up into one organizational goal for growth. So then I pull the team all together and I'm like, okay, this is our growth goal as one cohesive team.
Yeah.
You guys all know your piece that you've committed to, and they're the ones that come up with the number. So, you know, anyway, so what I had told them last year when we did our fall planning was that if you reach our growth goal 3 months consecutively, they have to be in a row, that I would dye my hair pink. And it was last November. No, so it was last, let me think here. September, October, November. They hit it like bang, 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 right in a row. But November, they had met November's goal like by the middle of November. And so I remember we have agencies Zoom, and I looked at agencies Zoom and I was like, so I'm dyeing my hair. Anyway, it was fun.
That was
I'm glad I
fantastic.
it was funny. I have never done anything like that. I've always been like boring hair person, like same color, everything, not
Yeah.
much changes. And so, yeah, that was an adventure.
Even just the goals like that, of having team goals,
Mhm.
and and the team being able to root, that's the best thing that I did this year, was create some KPIs for our entire group,
Mhm.
and had it done on a quarterly basis, and kind of gamify it a little bit, and offered rewards. Like, our biggest reward is a rotating half day off on Friday, and
Nice.
we've had a team party. But just, and it helps to keep score and to have a scoreboard, and for the team to actually look at it and track it, and to say, "Hey, Kelly, we need 7 more review requests by the end of the quarter." So there's a
Mhm.
little accountability. There's
Yeah.
that's created a lot of team cohesiveness. Um, which I didn't really factor that in, was for, the plan for this goal. So,
And when you pull the team in like that too, and you engage them that way, it also reduces your what you need to do from a management perspective
yeah,
because they themselves are um they want to show up for each other. And
yeah,
so it's not you pushing, it's them pushing and pulling for each other.
yeah, yeah, huge.
Mhm.
So I want to back up a little bit. So when you decided to go independent and create your own independent agency in what, 2014?
Mhm.
So what was that process like? Did you were you aware of that there was insurance networks that you could join? Did you
I
join
was.
a network?
Mhm.
And 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 if you joined a network, why was that a good fit for you?
Right. So I was aware of them. I wasn't aware of them, like, when I first started on the independent side, I had no idea that was a
Right.
thing. I became aware of them probably only, like, a few months before I launched the agency, and it all happened, like, really fast. In fact, I never thought it would happen because back from my State Farm days, it was, I just never imagined I'd even be ever to be an agency owner. So
Yeah.
it's sometimes I have to pinch myself that I'm even in the position that I'm in. Sometimes I still feel like a receptionist. um, so I learned about them a few months before I went on my own. I talked to a few.
Mhm.
Actually, one of them was like, "You need to have a bigger book of business before you move," and which he wanted me to go under another agency, and I was like, "No way.
No.
Not
Yeah.
gonna happen." And it was a very small book at that time because the first few years, my kids were 2 and 3 when I first
Yeah.
started my book. So, I was kinda like stay-at-home mom and, like and my husband was supporting us at that
Yeah.
time. And so I needed a lot of flexibility, and I grew as I could. It wasn't,
Yeah.
my full-time thing.
Yeah.
So I ended up running into Insurance Producers Network.
Mhm.
They're, out of Minnesota,
Mhm.
and I liked them. Their ethics are aligned with mine, and their values are. Um, I liked them because they have a cap on how much they'll take from you per month, so it's capped
Okay.
at $1,000 versus some of them are, whatever the split is
Yeah.
forever, and it just keeps climbing. Um, so it was really nice to have a cap. I had an attorney that helped me kind of vet through what the contracts are, and with this, there was just a
Good.
small buyout for a couple of years, but there's no ownership interest or first right of refusal even, or just a very clean, simple
Okay.
contract. So I did go with Insurance Producers Network, like, to get started. And then now it's a little different because with the acquisition,
Mm.
the books of business and companies, they were very different. And so I probably have half of my book through insurance producers and then the other half
Okay.
isn't. We still use all one management system, and we still like everything's on the same platform. We work as one cohesive whole. There's not two separate agency workings, but
Yeah.
so now but we've been capped with them for so long that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So if someone is looking for a network or looking to join a network, what kind of things should they look for? And maybe
Mhm.
more importantly, what kind of things should they look out for?
Right. So I would say, that being able to actually, like, own your book of business in a way where it's 100% yours, as in you can sell it to anybody that you wanna sell it to.
Right.
You don't have to offer it to them first or anything like that. That's a big one for me. I really like having a cap on how much you pay them.
Yeah.
I think the $1,000 cap is great because you don't want just to keep paying and more
Right.
as you grow. Like, it's just we don't need, and especially in the industry, like we're already being squeezed by companies having us do more and more on our side and that type of thing. Like you don't need someone else getting a grab at more
Yeah.
of your income. um, those I would say are probably the two biggest. Otherwise, I mean, the variety of carriers is important
Yeah.
too. Um, I would
Yeah.
say culture is important. Like for me, the culture and the ethics behind IPN, it's a family run organization. Um, and so it's not like a big corporate type of
Yeah.
environment, which I like.
Yeah. Are there things that you're aware of that someone should look out for? Like, I don't know much about networks, which is why I'm
Yeah.
asking people, and from what I hear, one of the biggest ones is unfair buyout
Yes.
that you don't realize, and you would never think, I know. So when I first went independent and was gonna go independent, I was a farmer's agent, and I decided I wanted to start my own agency. I had no
Mm,
idea what that meant at the
mhm.
at the time. And so I tried to get my own direct appointments, and that didn't go so well. There was
Mhm.
only going to be a handful, and I just decided that, well, if I'm going to go independent, I have to have a full arsenal of
Right.
companies to work with.
Mhm.
And I didn't know anything about networks, and I
Mhm.
think that I probably would have signed the first contract that came by
Yeah.
that had, because the only thing I was looking for was markets to have
Mm.
access to.
Mhm.
And I think I would have regretted it, because now I would probably be paying out a very hefty lump sum,
Yeah.
to get out of that
Yeah.
captivity. So
I would say just being careful to like if you want to leave, like I know if I choose to leave Insurance Producers Network, I can just walk away now. You
mm,
have I think it was like 2 or 3 years you had a $10,000 buyout, which is whatever. But then after that, there's no buyout. Like you are literally free to go. And
yeah,
there's a lot that there's buyouts. There's a lot where you're restricted of like who you can sell your book to.
yeah,
You want to sell it within the network, which that's just, if you ask me, that's just ridiculous.
right,
Um, ones that have it's important to make sure that, you know, that there is a cap. Otherwise, like what happens when you get to 5, 10, 15 million in premium volume, like
yeah,
you're paying some big dollars out at
yeah,
that point.
yeah. That's massive. When I moved over, so AmeriGuard was an existing agency, and I grew relatively quickly.
Mhm.
And but whatever year it was, I was already paying in $20,000. And I was looking at it and going, and I mean, to boot, like I was already almost half running the agency. I created a website. I added on an insurance market of travelers,
Yeah.
and I added on our quick rating program. Because it was a fairly older agency that didn't have a
Yes.
lot of technology.
Mhm.
But I was even starting to figure out, hey, there's going to have to be some sort of change here, or I'll just go out on my own. I'm not going to give you $100,000 for
Yeah.
something that's not being supported.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
cap is huge.
Yeah.
Um, Moving into your acquisition, which is so
Mhm.
exciting.
No,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Tell me about that experience, and what you learned.
Oh gosh, I could write a book on this.
Yeah, good. You should.
Yeah, right. Um, so it was an awesome experience. It happened in a very weird way. So I was actually going through Goldman Sachs program. So I was in Boston, and I got this phone call, and it was from an agency owner, and they owned Aspire Insurance Agency. So I'm Aspire Insurance Group.
Okay.
And I actually called him back right. I normally wouldn't have called him back right away, but I was scared that he was wanting to get into some kind of fight about names.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to clear my head out of this so I can engage in my 10,000 small businesses at Goldman Sachs. So I called him back and he wanted to do coffee. And so when I got back to the cities, we did coffee and he just asked so many questions, but I didn't really understand why. And come to find out, he had gotten a piece of my mail. So thank you, Dell Computers, had sent me like information, Aspire Insurance Agency, but then had my name on it to his
Yeah.
location. And so he was curious and did some homework, and that's how he ended up finding me. Um, and then at the end of that coffee, he just told me, well, I'm doing my perpetuation planning and I'd like to continue talking with you.
Wow.
So I know. So we actually went very slow, like 8 months of time, just like, slowly kicking the ball the next level. I wasn't rushing. He wasn't rushing. It was both like he had started his agency from scratch and I had as well. So we had neither one of us had ever been on him a selling or a buying side.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a broker or anything. So we just kind of we went slow and um it was a good experience. I did my financing through Westfield Bank, and that was really great because they are able to use your book of business as collateral.
Okay.
So which was great. It just worked out really nice. Um, yeah, I would totally use them again.
So
Um, yeah,
so he didn't was he working with any other agencies there at the time, or he just had this
he
strange
was.
coincidence where
Yeah,
he
he
received
was.
your mail and he
Yeah,
just said, "Why don't I reach out to Beth?"
right. So he actually was talking with another person in Duluth at that time, and it seems as though talks were probably pretty, serious at that time when he got my mail, I guess. And
For
then
those that are listening, the agency that she purchased was probably about 4 hours north,
yeah,
2
like
n
3, yeah,
yes,
3
so
up 3 hours more.
fairly close, but about 4 hours north of us, so it wasn't just, down the street.
No.
But yeah. So I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean
Yeah.
to interrupt. Yeah.
So yeah, we closed, I would say merging, it was interesting because it was, definitely a little bit of an old school agency, lots and
Yeah.
lots of paper.
Yeah.
And we're very high on technology, so
Yeah.
that was interesting. And then two merging together, it's our core values were really similar. Our whys were really similar,
Mm.
but our hows were very different because one was more throwback and then we're more, on
Yeah.
the front end of
Yeah.
things. And then I would say one of my biggest learning curves was, when you start a scratch agency, your agency is such a reflection of you because
Yeah.
it is really you.
Yeah. Hmm.
And versus an agency that's maybe, passed through ownership a few times and is
Yeah.
kind of a mixture, right, of different personalities and
Yeah.
fingerprints that have been put on it. But when you're scratch it, it's just purely you,
Yeah.
not only from the clients that you're attracting, but also from the team that you built. So one of my biggest learning curves, I guess, and it's actually been really good, but humbling at moments, was leadership style. So the previous owner's leadership style was very, it's an older school style of management, kind of like pretty micromanagey, and I am just not
Mm.
that. Like, I'm not going to tell you the next thing to do for your job. You need to know your job,
Yeah.
and I want to empower people and lift them up, but I am not going to delineate
Yeah.
each step for you.
Right.
And so that was, really an eye-opening experience. And really, furthermore, once you identify that there's that difference in leadership style, who's able to rise to the occasion, and then who is just can't,
Yeah.
you know. So that was really an interesting experience.
Um, from the time you started talking with this owner until the purchase, how long a time frame was that?
8 months.
8 months. Okay.
Mhm.
And then how did you come to the value of the agency? How was that determined?
Yeah. So I knew what his revenues were, and he gave me, um, statements just so I could see like 3 years back. And honestly, it had been a pretty flat agency. Like he was, um, I think when you have a leadership style that is more micromanagement, you kind of like can limit your growth because you're so inside of
Yeah.
trying to number the next step that it's hard to be outside growing. And um, so I knew I have I use Nori and Company for my CPA, and they really niche in insurance agencies, and
Okay.
they've just been great. And so I kind of had an idea of what multiple I would like the highest I would go. But you know, may I guess art of negotiation, right? I wanted to hear
Yeah.
from him what he was looking for first,
Yeah.
other than me putting out a number. So he did um give me a multiplier of what he was just like quite a bit less than what I was
Mm.
actually gonna. I know. Whew,
Perfect.
yeah. So we just ran with what he had proposed.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You had one number in your head and that came in lower. That's best
Yeah.
case scenario.
And now on the other side of it too, this was an agency that, was run more old school. He didn't have any kind of network support or anything like that. And so
Yeah.
he wasn't growing. So he was losing contracts and that type of thing. So in
Mhm.
hindsight now, honestly, how he valued it, I think was appropriate.
Yeah.
I just didn't you can only ask so many questions. I mean, I think any acquisition, like even a seasoned person that does acquisitions, there's gonna be things that you learn on the other side of
Right.
the transaction where you're like, "Oh, I didn't know this or I didn't know that." And so I think it was a fair price.
Yeah.
And I also knew I was in a position where the areas that I knew on the front end that needed to be improved, I knew I had the skills to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah. With that, since team culture is so important to your, identity, how did that work with I think that was a much smaller team
Mhm.
at the new agency, right? How did they, um, acclimate into your culture and to the rest of your group, and more importantly, how you operate, because they probably use very little technology at all,
Yeah.
and now they have these new systems that they have to adapt to. So yeah, how did they adapt
Yeah.
overall? Yeah.
So this experience for me was actually probably one of the biggest experiences that catapulted me from a leadership standpoint, or that really like pulled everything together for me. Um, I'll try to condense this into like not a super long story, but
Yeah.
this could be a very long story. It started I pulled everybody together, and of course you know, there's naturally just like some tensions. It was overall pretty good, but I was noticing some um problems with one team member that she would tend to kind of gossip behind the scenes and that type of thing.
Hmm.
And um really kind of not a healthy,
Yeah.
not not behaving in a healthy way for the team. Then I saw there's others that are just really low conflicts. They were having a hard time like coming to me with things. So here's what I did is I found a tool called Acumax, and I will tell you if there's
Hmm.
one smart thing that I've done in this whole thing, it's this. And Acumax is neuroscience. So it's not a personality test. It's actually like human wiring.
Hmm.
And so it tells you like how people are wired. So high patience, low patience, high conflict, low conflict, heads up communicator, heads down. I mean, it tells you a bunch of different things about people. And I first did it, and my husband and I did it together. We did the Acumax, and she gave us our results, and it was like I had someone with a crystal ball sitting in front of me that had no idea who we were or anything, telling us all about, you know, him and I, and it was so dead on
Yeah.
that it was spooky almost. Even
Which
when
gives
she
you instant credibility when
Yeah,
you're going to pass that on to your team, right? If they
yeah,
nailed you and your husband, who
yes,
you know what you guys are, So to
Right.
be able to get that to your team, you know that it's gonna be accurate, or at least you believe in it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it was even down to, like, "This is how this feels to you, this is how this feels to you," like, different tendencies, and my husband and I are, like, totally opposites from each other. So we were like, "Yep," and we laughed in a few moments, and then a couple other moments were like, "Oh my gosh, this puts in a whole different perspective," and now I don't take that personal anymore because it's actually a wiring thing, it's
Yeah.
not, like, about me. Um, so then I had it done with the team, and so this was the biggest catalyst. First of all, it terrified me, the results, and it also pulled
Mm.
everybody together as a cohesive whole, like, in such an incredible way that I could have never understood the impact that it would have until I went through what we did. So, the first, it told me that my personal lines and my commercial lines account managers that I had at that time were, like, not the right fits for a variety of different
Scary.
reasons. But one, I was terrified because one of them was the gossiper.
Mm.
And, and I knew I needed to make a hard decision, which I already had known that, but I kept blaming myself.
Mm.
Like, why am I not a good enough leader that I can not get through this? And I've been coaching in private on this, and it's needle's not moving, and what's wrong with me that I can't? And so this was put it in perspective for me. Like, nope,
Yeah.
this is not a you problem, Beth. It's not
Mm.
you, a lack of leadership or whatever. So it gave me the confidence to actually, like, I would say if you could describe it, it's toxic A player, which is
Mm.
really hard because then this is when you're who you say you are, the morals, the ethics you say that are playing in your business. This is when the rubber meets the road
Yeah.
because you're making a decision to hire someone that your clients like adore and rave about, but she's so toxic for
Mm.
her team behind the scenes. So I let her go. And that was very hard. It was but it was amazing because there had been someone hired to support her 6 weeks before I let her go. She wasn't licensed yet or anything, and you cannot even believe how this girl has soared since that decision was made. It's been the most incredible journey to watch. So on the flip side, my commercial lines account manager, she came with the agency acquisition, and from a cultural standpoint, she was so wonderful for the team, kind-hearted, super
Mm.
sweet, like, she wanted to be able to be a leader and that type of thing, but she literally did not have the skills or capabilities. She was presented in a way that she seemed as though she had more knowledge and skills than she actually
Mm.
did. I would say from a leadership style, if you go from someone who micromanages, it's almost like a person driving with their GPS on all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
But then all of a
Good
sudden,
analogy.
right? All of a sudden their GPS is turned off.
They don't know where they're going.
Even though you've been driving the same route for 12 years,
Yeah.
your GPS is turned off, so you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
And so this is a moment where you learn if, can you rise to the occasion or not? And so
Adapt.
Um, the person who does Acumax for me said, Either you're gonna have to let her go or she's gonna weed herself out because she doesn't have the capabilities to do what you need her to do." And so I made the decision that for a variety of different reasons that I was gonna let her weed herself out.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, and she did, and her words when she put in her notice was, "I fully understand what you need me to do. I believe in the direction that Aspire's going for, and I'll continue to be a raving fan, but I can't do it."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So, funny enough, we put out a Indeed ad,
Mhm.
and we created a profile of the person that we wanted in Acumax, and 2 days later, the clone of that
Wow.
person applied, she came from the banking sector. And she's been in that position now since April of this year. And she currently has more capacity and better workflows than the person that was in that seat for 12 years.
Wow.
So just, but I will tell you, nothing short of terrifying
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hard choices.
Yeah. Very hard, especially
Mhm,
dealing with people's lives, and especially
mhm,
with that choice or with that most recent one that you allowed to let her weed herself out
mhm.
because, it sounds like, she had a lot of she had some strengths, or at least she wasn't, a problem. She was trying and just didn't have the skill set.
Yes, yes. But the thing is like if my expectations are here, right? But you can only get to here, I'm not gonna lower
Yeah,
my
correct.
expectations.
That's right.
And that was in a very, very gentle way. That was the message that I kept saying to her is like, I'm not gonna hire somebody to help you right now because you don't have a full load on your back. If
Mm,
I benchmark, we follow best practices. If you don't have a full load on your back and you can't get your work done in a day, it is not because you have too much on your back. It's because we are lacking in efficiency and
yeah.
in capacity. So we have to look at that. And I would come alongside and alongside and alongside. And it just, she was correct though. Like when we talked when she left, and it was one of the neatest conversations I've had. Like she was, we were 100% on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, good on her to have that
Mhm.
self-awareness.
Yeah.
Most people would not.
I agree,
Most
and the nice thing too about how that all played out is, like, her and I will still text back and forth every
Oh,
once in a while, and she stayed in touch, and there's no one's salty or upset. I'm
yeah.
so happy for
Nice.
her because she had the bravery to find a place and plant herself in an environment that she'll thrive in,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what I would want for her.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of tech are you using in your agency, um, to keep everything connected and just, your CRMs, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I do this thing called I have a vendor toolkit where we actually have all of our vendors listed, and it's a little bit ridiculous actually. So we use EasyLinks as a management system.
Okay.
We use Agency Zoom. Um, we use Office 365, although we do use Slack. I just find the user friendly of Slack. The team just uses it so much. I haven't uprooted that piece yet and moved over to Teams. Probably in the future I'll do that, but I have not braved
I
that yet.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. We have text through EasyLinks. Um, we do a lot with Slide Broadcast.
Okay.
Trying to think, we do have Zywave. Um, we don't use that to the capacity that it should be,
Yeah.
but we will be using it again. We used it a lot before we had our transition, and then that was one thing that got put on the back burner. Um, I'm just trying to think of what else. Our phone system is Lightspeed, which
Okay.
we've really liked. Trying to think of what else. Those are the ones that are off
Yeah.
the top of my head.
That's a good lineup.
Yeah,
That's a good lineup.
it works.
Uh, yeah. And sorry, you said your management system is Easy Links.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. What are some of the mistakes that you've made along the way?
Mm.
We've all made mistakes, and I know you've said, I've saw in one of your most recent posts, to fail forward, and that's
Mhm.
exactly it. I mean,
Mm.
that's how I've learned just about everything, matter of fact.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a glutton for learning everything the hard way.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah. Gosh. So
Me too.
I would say for me, probably one of the reasons why, like, well, culture is important just because of my experience from just the other agencies that I've been in. But then I would say leadership has become really important and culture even more because as I went through just building my book of business and starting the agency, I cannot even tell you how excited I was when I got to the point where I first like hired the first person in the agency for help. And I realized, oh my gosh, like leading people and leading a team and creating a cohesive, high performing team that is harmonious together, that is way harder than building a book of business. And
Yeah.
so I fell on my face so many times. Sometimes I'd be so desperate for help, I would just not do my due diligence. Other times I would have way too long of a fuse. I mean, I just have made all kinds of mistakes in that area. And
Yeah.
now I'm at a point where I feel like I've pressed in and enough and learned enough and fell on my face enough that that's an area like of real passion for me because of what I've gone through to finally feel like I'm at a spot where I'm like, okay, you know, not that I'm perfect and I have it all figured out,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of intention and a lot of, um, I've kind of been there, done that a few times at this point. So,
Yeah, and some I think that's the case of most of us, in terms of when we're grow into that leadership and ownership role, even though we have some of those baseline skill sets, you're
mhm.
still learning on the job,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think one of my biggest mistake was of being a leader was not understanding that people aren't wired like me.
yeah,
And they're
yes.
not driven like me, and that
Mhm,
they why would they be? It's they don't own this business. They're not,
mhm.
I mean, so that's not their thing.
Yeah,
For some of 'em, this is a job, and we have to learn what makes them tick.
right,
And and I didn't, that's not how I wired. I want to be great at everything that I do. Not
right.
everybody is like that.
It's
You
true.
know, so, I don't that took me a long time to figure out. I don't know why. I'm almost embarrassed to admit. I shouldn't say that long, but it took me a while.
It
Yeah.
it is such a journey. I know for me, I started learning leadership from, like, someone who was teaching me leadership, and they were teaching me leadership from, like, the old school, like, top-down kind of way, and I remember thinking to myself, "I am never gonna get this. I'm never gonna get this." And then the journey from, like, that time to now where I'm like, I lead 100% authentically me, which is
Yeah.
completely opposite of the way I was learning to lead. So the journey between those 2 places has just been, like, really, you know,
Yeah.
gratifying. Like, I really
Yeah.
love that process.
Yeah. Yeah, I love being a leader. I take it very seriously, and it's
Mhm.
something that I've become a student of,
Yeah,
you
same.
know, and learned, so much. I love reading business development books.
Mhm.
Um and and I've learned so much, and I've evolved as we should. And if we
Yep,
don't, we're just going to be average. And anyway,
and that's no fun.
no.
Mm-mm.
Last question.
Mhm.
What advice would you have for scratch agencies or newer agencies just getting started?
Mm. I would say that you need to, like, balance out your high highs and your low lows emotionally
Mhm.
because you have that when you're first starting, like, it's raw and you're gonna have days where you're like, feel like you need to just, put it on the dumpster and light a fire under the stairs and walk away. And it's
Yeah.
gonna be like the day after that when you land this giant account and then you're on the top of a mountain and then it's just so like you don't realize the highs and lows that can come
Yeah.
in of all things insurance, right? Like who would think that?
Yeah.
But just really learning to kind of weather those and like come to some type of like, of course, celebrate it, but like you don't need to have high highs and low lows. Like you need to kind of have, yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. And I've seen some, and in fact, just yesterday on the AOA Facebook page, and I saw Mike Sharp posted what his November month was, which, in all honesty, did not look that bad to me. But he was disappointed with it, and I was thinking, there's going to be those. You're going to have those that are just low.
Yes.
Sometimes they just don't come together, and it
Right.
just doesn't work out. You're not doing anything different. You just that's just what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great advice of keeping an even keel
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that it's a it's a marathon, not a race.
Yes, this is long game. This is
Yeah.
no get rich quick
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Um, hey, I want to be respectful of your
Yeah.
time. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you
So,
so much for having me.
yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get this thing wrapped up. Everyone else, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast. Beth, it's been a pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
everyone, we will see you next time. Bye, Beth.